Well, welcome to the Geospatial-Next Tuesday talk. Yes, the slide is wrong. It is Tuesday, not Friday. Last week was Thanksgiving week, and I took the week off and didn't do a talk. So this week you're going to get two talks. The focus of Geospatial-Next is on the changing world of geospatial. That means technology changes and business changes. And in many ways, I think of that as geospatial crossing the chasm, moving from a narrow niche to a much wider use. So our topic today, does the rise of geospatial digital twins mean the end of maps? Let's talk about that one. And I posted something on LinkedIn last week, which got a lot of interest and attention and comments, which was great. So I'll cover some of that stuff today. So let's give some definitions to start with. A map. Let's define a map. A map is a diagrammatic representation of an area of land or sea showing physical features. I will underline that diagrammatic representation within that definition. So what's a digital twin? Now, I'm very careful about how I reference digital twin. I define it as a geospatial digital twin, just so we don't get confused. There's a lot of confusion on what is a digital twin. My definition is focused around the geospatial part of that. So a geospatial digital twin is a virtual representation of the real world, including physical objects, processes, relationships, and behaviors. In many ways, we're representing and modeling the real world. So we're taking an analog world and digitizing it, and that allows us to view it in the ways that we want to view it, and model processes that do occur, and models that we want to test out what might happen from them. So it's a much bigger conversation, and thanks to new technology, this is now becoming something that we can really start seriously talking about. But today's world is very much focused on data. Yes, we have new ways to collect data, and I've spoken at length about miniaturization of sensors. So we have big companies like Maxar and Planet that are doing stuff in space. They've got satellites and they're collecting imagery and other data sources. We've got companies like Umbra, who Joe Morrison works for. Anyone that's read about some of Joe's excellent articles, they're very much involved in SAR or radar from that sort of orbit. My old company, Hexagon Geospatial, Leica was bought by them a long time ago, a Swiss company. They produce a lot of hardware for doing all sorts of data collection that we're talking about, from various levels, from satellites all the way down to actually below ground data collection. Innovise, they're into 3D and LiDAR. And here, lots of data collection there. Automobiles are ever a bigger part of their world. So there is very much a focus on what we can now collect, and a lot of money pouring in to the space economy, and these other providers or collectors and providers of data. But what do we do with all that data? Let's again sort of step back and give some definitions. Data itself is a collection of facts. Again, I'm pulling this from the web. It's individual pieces, it's individual facts. What we do is we collect various data sets and form that as information. So that's ordered data information. But ultimately what we're trying to get to is knowledge and insight. And really that's what we do there, is we collect the right information together, and we associate with context, and that's how we derive knowledge and insight. And there's a lot of work in that world of taking that data and actually deriving insight from that. And again, that's ultimately what an organization is after. The data is the fuel to actually the end product, which is knowledge and insight. So telling geospatial data stories, this is a big one for me. And again, I've spoken about this in the past. At a macro level, that's really where we've sat historically with GIS. We've worked with two-dimensional data largely and produced maps. And maps are hugely useful to getting a sense of a big picture sense and to see patterns. And we can bring lots of data together, generate a picture, which is essentially a map, and get insight from that. But now we've moved into this new world where we've actually got all these new data sets and ways to analyze this data. we can start looking at a more detailed level, so the meso and micro levels. And three-dimensional data gives us a sense of place. So it gives us the ability to zoom into that intersection that we've seen patterns of in a two-dimensional map, and to really get a sense of what it's like at that intersection. It could be also smart cities, looking at a city in 3 dimensions, navigating the streets as if we were driving them. So this is sort of our first level of a digital twin, if you like, the sort of 3-dimensional models, but with the context of everything around it, not a digital twin on its own. That's just the geospatial digital twin is that context of everything around it, like the real world. The second aspect of digital twin, geospatial digital twin, is, again at that meso micro level, is this sense of change, 4-dimensional data, and that's really that can be stationary objects which are changing. For example, the temperature of a generator. That could be vehicles, people moving around. So something is changing. That geometry is changing. So when we bring that change and sense of place together, 3 dimensional, 4 dimensions, that's a real representation of reality. That's our geospatial digital twin. Patterns is really where we get that map from. So I mentioned at the start of this talk that we're talking about crossing the chasm. To me, the key to the future of geospatial being more widely adopted is integration with business systems. So we take 2-dimensional objects that have been traditionally part of the GIS world. We take 3-dimensional objects, which is some degree of set in isolation within architecture and construction, a building that you've designed on its own. But in geospatial terms, we drop that into the real world. We put other buildings around it, so we get the context of what's around it. And then we add those changing objects as well. Maybe vehicles driving through a city, people moving through, things that are changing. So when we take all those individual objects, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional objects, and 4-dimensional changing objects, and we link those to existing systems, things become a lot more powerful. And when I say to existing systems, I'm really talking about business systems. I'm talking about SAP, I'm talking about Salesforce, I'm talking about IBM Maximo, I'm talking about other business systems. So when we connect location-based data with 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional location-based data, with business data and the systems attached to those business to that business data and those systems they sit in, we can start really doing some very powerful work and provide some serious insights to an audience that's not used to working directly with geospatial data. So I'll go back to my question. Will geospatial data digital twins replace maps? My opinion on that is, of course, and you can probably tell from where this talk's gone to, is no, it won't. Maps are a very important part of this bigger conversation. As we tell data stories with geospatial data and link that into business systems, we have the power of all and not the power of one. So geospatial digital twins will provide a greater depth of insight. That's my opinion, in combination with maps. So there's your Tuesday talk. We'll do another one on Friday. You can find me, Matt Sheehan, on LinkedIn. I'm also active on Twitter and Instagram at GeoMattSheehan, and we will talk in a few days. Thanks for watching.